So thanks for joining us for this edition of Getting Started with Microsoft 365. Today we're going to be focusing specifically on the best practices for securing Office 365 and Microsoft 365. Now, for the purposes of what we're talking about today, we're really focusing on Office 365 Business, that's Business Premium and Business Essentials, and Microsoft 365 Business. We're really not focusing very much on the enterprise SKUs. While you could certainly do any of the same things here with enterprise, if you have access to any of the enterprise functionality, you would probably want to take this a little further than what we're recommending. But we know that typically most SMBs are not securing Office 365 or Microsoft 365 at all. And so if you just did these couple of things that we're going to highlight in this short video, you'll be way ahead of anybody else in the marketplace as it relates to securing your data. So we're going to talk about what your responsibilities are, what are Microsoft responsibilities, who to contact if you need more help, and then we're going to get into the specific meats and potatoes on how can I secure my data. We've only got 5 slides here, and then we're going to actually hop into a live tenant so you can get right to work. So a lot of times people ask, well, who's responsible for securing what? And this graph here, I think, very adequately outlines that. Specifically, we're going to walk you through how to take care of everything in that blue box with the exception of client endpoints. So we're going to talk about data governance, rights management, accounts and access management. Those are the things that you're responsible for. You are responsible for securing your data outside of the cloud as well as access to the data inside the cloud. Microsoft is really responsible for everything below that. Office 365 and Microsoft 365 land in that left-hand column, that SaaS column, that stands for Software as a Service. So you're responsible for the things in the blue boxes up top. Microsoft is responsible for the gray things down at the bottom. Well, what if you need a little help? Well, we're certainly glad to help you. We carry multiple gold competencies for Microsoft, one of the top Microsoft partners in the region. And we've also got a highly trained staff of Microsoft engineers, change management analysts, and trainers. And really, the change management and training is the most important piece of the pie here. So if you need help, need a little bit of guidance, feel free to reach out to us. Our blog is the best place to do that. We're also active on social media, or you can just hit our website and reach out to a member of our team. So as we talked about when we talked about areas of responsibility, you really have 3 that you're responsible for. And for the purposes of our presentation today, we're really only going to get into the bottom 2. Okay, so just data security and tenant admin level security. We'll have a separate webinar at some point on endpoint security. So just keep an eye on our YouTube channel or our website for that. But really right now we're just focusing on data security and tenant admin level security. So let's get started. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to log into my tenant now as a tenant level admin. And our recommendation is the very first thing you should do is secure your admin accounts with multi-factor authentication. The most common way that data gets exfiltrated or pulled out of Office 365 and Microsoft 365 is a really bad password hygiene. People tend to use the same password multiple times. Now, our recommendation is that you actually turn MFA on for all accounts, but if that's just too much work for you and you can't be bothered with that, we certainly see that a lot in the small business space. At the very least, you need to turn it on at the admin level. So we're going to show you how to do that very quickly. You're just going to go into the admin center, go to Azure Active Directory, and then you're going to hop over into Azure Active Directory, and then come down here to the MFA blade. And you can do this 2 ways, right? This is kind of the long way. So we're going to go in and actually enable, if we choose to, our specific accounts that we want to enforce for MFA. So I've got my admin account. If I just wanted to type that in and find that account, you could see I could click that and enable. So that's the easiest, excuse me, that's the kind of the long way to do it. The fastest way to do it now for all your admin accounts and make sure everything is secure, it's relatively new features. If you click Conditional Access, there's this baseline policy that says require MFA for admins. So if I just turn this one policy on, now every time a new admin gets created, they'll have to set up MFA. If I had done it the previous way, that would not happen. But now every admin for every admin responsibility, as you can see there, is now automatically going to have MFA. Now, a best practice is do not use your what we call your daily driver account. That would be the account that you use every single day. Do not give any administrative privileges to that account at all. That should be a totally separate account and should only be used for administrative activities. Why? Well, that gives you an extra layer of security. Since you would very seldomly be emailing from that account or accessing that account, the likelihood of you falling to a phishing attack or that being a password spray attack is very low. You can also make that password up to 128 characters now. So you can make that an extremely long password in Azure AD if you choose to. So I'm going to go ahead and enable that just to show you what the user experience looks like. Now it's important to remember I'm actually not going to go all the way through this because I just don't have time in a short demo. So now I'm going to go sign back in now. I'm in a different browser with my admin account. And since I've turned that policy on, it's going to make me sign up. Now, if I can skip for now if I choose to, but I'll just show you what this next screen looks like. This is where I would actually set up my account for MFA. Now, anytime I log into this account, I'm going to be prompted for MFA. So that's step one and probably the best and most important thing you can do to secure your tenant. Okay, now that we've set up MFA for our admin accounts, the next thing you can do to make your life a little bit easier and to help secure your tenant is to brand your login page so that it matches your company brand. We're going to stay in Azure Active Directory and we're going to click this company branding tab here. And if I click default, I can now set screens that are not the Microsoft default. Now there's going to be a link on this page out to our blog that explains why this is important. But essentially what the bad guys will do is they will use phishing emails to try to get your users to give up their passwords, and they'll set the account login pages to look just like the Microsoft page. So what we can do is we can actually set our own login page background. So I'm going to use the Mario background, and then I'm going to put a banner logo on this as well. And you'll see I've got some specific requirements. So the image can't be bigger than 1920 by 1080, can't be bigger than 300 KB, and the banner logo has to be 280 by 60 or smaller, and has to be 10K or less. And now every time I log into Office 365 or Microsoft 365 now, I'm going to have the ability, I will not see the default Microsoft page, I'll now see my company page. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. Okay, so I'm in Chrome here and I've just went to portal.office.com and I'm going to throw my username in, and what you're going to see when I do this is that this default Microsoft, pretty image on the background with the mountains in it. If I click next, okay, so now that I've saved that screen, I'm going to log in. I've opened up a separate browser window just to make it a little faster. I'm going to log in now with my admin account. And so I just went to portal.office.com. You'll notice nothing looks different here, right? This is just the standard Office 365 login page. All it's asking for my username, which is fine. No harm in giving that up. And then once I press next, instead of it being the default Microsoft login page, this now represents my company brand. And so it's a great way to help secure your data and coach your team. Hey, if you don't see our company brand on a page that's asking for your password for Office 365 or Microsoft 365, do not give it up. Okay, next thing that we're going to cover really quickly is allowing your users to reset their own passwords. And so you do that here by staying in the Azure Active Directory portion. We're going to go to password reset, and we're going to go ahead and turn this on for all users. Now, if we wanted to, we could just test it as a pilot, maybe with a small group of users, but we're going to go ahead and turn it on for all users. You do have to do a couple things. So set up the authentication methods that you're going to support. In this case, we're just going to use the default settings, the number of questions that are required to register, and the number of questions that are required to reset. You can set these to 3, 4, or 5. I've set them to 3. And you can see here are the 3 questions that I have opted to require my users to use if they're going to use self-service password reset. Now, I can use any of these out-of-the-box ones, but if I'd prefer, I can set up a custom one like what's our super secret, password at our company. I don't think it's a very good one to use, frankly. I would use one of these predefined because Microsoft's given you quite a few here that your team can use. Now remember, you can check off as many of these as you would like, and then your team, when they actually go back and they set their password reset up, those are the questions that will be available to them. So you probably want to choose more than three. You'd want to choose quite a few. I didn't press save on that last screen. So I'm going to choose quite a few here. And now I've given my team up to 8 questions that they can use, right? So once I hit save on that, now it's ready to roll. So now let's go back in and we'll log back in as a administrator. And when I do, it should ask me to go ahead and register for self-service password reset, which I'm not going to do at this time. So more information is required. I can hit next, and then it'll ask me to fill out any of these things. I can set up my authentication email, and then I'll go into the portion of actually filling out my questions. So I'm not going to do that again in this case. We're just going to go ahead and close this down. But now you can set up, you have self-service password reset set up for your users so they can go do that on their own, reset their passwords if they lock their account, if they forget their account, and not bother the IT team or the business owner. Okay, next we're going to set up alerts in case we have forwards that are set up, automatic external email forwards that are set up for our users. This is one of the most common ways that bad guys will exfiltrate data out of Microsoft 365 is they'll go in, they'll convince the user to give their password up, then they'll go into their email and set up a forward that forwards any email outside of the company, any email that comes to that person, it will then forward it outside the company to this third party, this bad actor. Now, the really smart thing about that is if the user changes their password, the forwards still actually sit there. So the forwards remain in place. So this is a really important thing that you need to set up. You may even consider blocking external forwards entirely, which is our best practice. You can do that via PowerShell. And if you have MFA up, set up for all users, then your risk here is significantly lower. But to set this up, you're actually going to go into the Security and Compliance Center. Now, because right now that's still in a couple different places, Microsoft's in the process of separating out the Security and the Compliance Center. We're just going to go to protection.office.com. Oh, I forgot to turn off my self-service password reset. So let me do that real quick. And throw this in here real quick. Okay, perfect. All right, and so we'll set this up later. So we're just going to hop right in now and set up this alert. So you're going to go to protection.office.com, wait on it to load, and then you're going to go to alert policies. Now you can have a number of these alert policies already set up out of the box. If this is your very first time using the Office 365 or Microsoft 365 tenant, our recommendation is go in and click on any of the policies, and you'll see a little box up here. Mine's not here anymore because I've already done it, to turn on the Unified Audit Log. Now, we've got a whole separate webinar on how to use the Unified Audit Log, but that is really important because if your Unified Audit Log is not turned on, none of the data that happens inside your Office 365 tenant will be captured. So first time you log in, actually go in and turn that, click any of these policies, and you'll see a little box up here that says turn the Unified Audit Log on. All right, so let's set up a new alert policy, and we're going to call this external forwards, give it a friendly name. This alerts admins if emails are forwarded. We're going to say this is a high severity because I believe it is. And we're going to call this mail flow. And then we're going to say, just type in forward here, created a forward or a mail redirect rule. Okay, so if I wanted to apply this to specific users or a specific IP address, I could, but in this case, I'm actually going to just leave it for all and say, how do you want the alert to be triggered? This means I'm going to get an email every single time. Who do you want it to go to? So you can type in multiple people. I'm just going to leave, it defaults to whoever you're signed in as. So I'm just going to leave this as is, and I'm going to review my settings. Everything's good to go and finish. And now anytime a mail redirect rule is set up, I'll be alerted via email and I can go have a conversation with that user as to whether or not that's indeed a true forward that needs to happen. So highly recommend you do that. Again, if you have MFA set up, less of a risk, and best practice would be have MFA for all users and block external forwards for all users if that is an option inside your work. Okay, last thing in this webinar is we're going to walk you through making sure that your sharing settings are set up correctly for OneDrive and SharePoint. And I shouldn't say correctly, it's really based on what's best for you. So we're going to go back into the Admin Center at just admin.microsoft.com, click the SharePoint Admin Center, which I already have open over here, and I've gone immediately to sharing. Now you'll notice here that I have access to the SharePoint Admin Center, but also the OneDrive Admin Center. So these sharing settings are available in both locations, right? The SharePoint Admin Center and the OneDrive Admin Center. So um, the thing to remember here is that OneDrive can never be more permissive than SharePoint. So for example, if I set my SharePoint permissions to the least permissive, I can't pull my OneDrive settings up past that. Whereas if I set SharePoint to most permissive, I can let OneDrive be anywhere inside any of these other settings. Okay, so um, the thing to remember, especially in a smaller business, is that people are going to find a way to share data regardless. And so um, you want to make it as easy for them as possible to share data while also being smart. Now, there's a whole separate document on segmenting data out so that you can actually secure your data to best practices. So our recommendation is not this most permissive. I would probably put it somewhere down here in this new and existing guest. So that means they must sign in or provide a verification code if they're not inside your organization. Um, if you have a process inside your org where you're actually setting up external guests, you could potentially drop it down into this section. But I would probably, just to make life easier for everybody, just put it right here at new and existing settings. Now, excuse me, new and existing guests. Now remember, you can also do this at the individual site level as well. So if you have a super duper duper, highly secure SharePoint site like a finance site or a tax site or a legal site, you can go deeper on each one of those sites. This is really more at the higher level. You can go into these advanced settings. My recommendation is that you check off this guest must sign in using the same account to which sharing invitations are sent. And then I would actually uncheck the allow guests to share items they don't own. And that keeps people that maybe aren't in your tenant. They're just guests in your tenant, not your direct employees. It keeps them from sharing things to others. So that's my recommendation. And I would also go here only for files, folders, and links. So this allows you to share individual files or individual folders. I would keep it right here at only people in your organization. This is the default. So when I go to share a file, it's going to default to only people in your organization. Now, if I bumped this up to most permissive, I could turn this into anyone with a link, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave it down here. Okay, and so now once I have those settings all squared away, I can say save, and now I have secured my SharePoint sites and my OneDrive sites to the proper level. So in this presentation, in this webinar, we walked you through how to secure your data inside Office 365, and we also walked through your tenant admin level security. Now, if you have more questions, you want to get deeper on any of this, again, feel free to hit us up on social media or go to our website or just call the office. We're always happy to share our feedback and share our thoughts. And hopefully this is going to keep you safe and secure and keep your data out of the bad guys' hands.